Okay, so let's continue our discussion on God's existence. So, in the last video, we started the second part of the argument by looking into attributes of the properties of creatures and then trying to get something out of that to push toward existence, the act of being or God. In the last video, we looked at power. We defined power. We said, okay, power is the ability to make something the way that it is, or basically actualize a specific potential. And then based on that, we showed that, okay, then God has to be power itself, because God is the ultimate explanation, the ultimate cause, making everything to be the way that it is right now. I also explained the template of doing these sort of investigations. We first define something, and then we try to look for that in creatures, and if it is shared by everyone, then that becomes a candidate that we can actually push. But we have to be careful. First, we need to make sure that it is actually compatible with the definition of existence. Otherwise, if it's something related to the limitations of the creature world, then obviously it won't be compatible with the existence, and we cannot assign it to God. All right, so today we're going to look at another observation that we can do about creatures, and that's the fact that creatures move, in a sense, not in a locomotion, but in a more general sense. There's a dynamics. Everything is looking for something, and again, not looking in a sense of like high recognition level of human being, but everything moves. It has a dynamics, and it has a certain direction. It's not just like a random direction. It moves toward a certain direction. We see that, like I'm talking right now, I'm making this video, or you're listening. We're all moving, something is constantly in motion. So obviously, I mean, if you look around, we see that motion, right? But that's not something that we can actually push toward existence, because motion or change, by definition, is not something that we can apply to God. By definition, God cannot be different from what it is. So that's not a good candidate. But there is something in motion that does not necessarily require motion, but it still can be pushed upward. And that's the desire for something. Again, I'm talking in high level language of human language, but you can see how this can appear in other beings also in lower levels. We all have desire for something that causes us to move. So I have a desire that I started making this video. You're looking for something when you're listening here. There is something that you desire that causes you to move. In the same sense for a tree, for a dog, every motion is because of something in them, some desire. Even a stone coming down, you see, so that's why I'm saying it's not desire in a sense that they have it like a consciousness desiring something. Even a stone coming down, there is a direction to it. It's not just completely random to any direction. It has a specific direction. And that direction, that's what I mean by that desire toward a specific thing. There is motion, but that motion is not undirected. It's not toward anywhere, sometimes left, sometimes right. It's not like that. It's towards something. And in that sense, that's what I mean, a desire towards some specific thing. Or not even towards some specific thing, because it might not be something on the other end, but there is a direction. Anyhow, and the thing is that this direction, this attraction to something, or this having this direction, does not necessarily mean emotion. Because when we get to the things that we desire and caused us to move, we still desire them, but we're no longer moved because we have them. And that's when these two things overlap, the desiring and having that thing, you start to have joy. You enjoy, basically, right? So for example, you want a food, You want that, that's what you desire, and then that moves you to get to that food. And when you get to that food, you have it, what you want, and that's the joy, right? That would be a good definition of joy. You enjoy having the food that you desire. So that desire, I believe it exists. It doesn't necessarily translate to motion. So it can be something that can be pushed to existence. What would happen if we do that? If we push the desire, what we are saying is basically that God is also that act of desiring something, that is directed towards something, wanting something. But what is that thing? Like, what is it that God desires? Now we can get to an answer in multiple ways. This is the fun of the investigation. Like, you can see I just have it like a general template. I push it upward, just trying to understand what the results of it would be. And if it makes sense, then good. If we push the desire up to God, then the question is, what is it that God desires? The first thing to notice is that whatever God desires must be a necessary being, right? Because God is the active being. In other words, it's necessary. And we also said that the active being is that desiring itself. That act of desiring is the same thing as the active being. But that means that what God desires must also be something necessary. But we can only have one necessary thing, and that's God. So the only thing that God can desire is itself. There cannot be any other candidate for whatever it is that God is directed towards. The other way to see the same problem is that, okay, God is desiring, but it's not moving because it can't move. So if it desires and it can't move, the only option that we can make this thing work is that God has what it wants, what it desires. Or in other words, God is what it desires, because it can't have something in addition to itself. God is simple. So God is directed toward itself. So again, we see the same conclusion, that God is what God desires, which makes sense because now we have the desire. God desires itself. There's no motion. An immediate consequence, God is joy, right? Because you have something, we said, okay, let's define joy as having what we desire. God has what it desires. God is enjoying, or in other words, God is joy. God is just the act of joy, And the explanation happens when we go down again from God. We come down, and so we now see everything in a new light. Instead of saying, okay, instead of going from bottom to up, look, we move, therefore God is desiring. We can come downward. We can say, okay, we are desiring because God is desiring itself. That desire that we have is something that we participated in by participating in existence, because the act of existence is the act of desiring. But it's still, we're saying, okay, desiring God, but we're not desiring God, right? I mean, even though we are participating in the act of desiring, but the object is not exactly God. Like, I'm not desiring God when I desire food. But there must be, again, some form of relation, because God is desiring God. So if I participate in that, then not only the desire, but also the object must be somehow participated in me. Or in other words, my desire must somehow participate in that desire. Or the object of my desire must be somehow participating in the object of desire of God, or in God. I love it. Like the I'm not sure if you're following, but if you come and understand and take the steps, things are just so clear. Like it's like a mathematical theorem that you just see things leading to each other. It's very clean and neat. I really love that. Now I lost the thread. Okay, so there's something else that we can also add to the whole thing. So instead of desiring and it's God that it desires and that the God is joy, the other thing is that we can also define good. We can define good to be the thing that everyone desires. Everyone desires it's good. You know, we want the good. The reason that I'm talking right now is because I judged this thing, recording, to get me to some good. You know, there is a good that I desire, and I believe that doing this will get me there. That's why that desire is moving me toward this. Basically, is moving me, and that motion is me making this video. And you're also looking for a good. You're listening to it, and that motion, that listening, is caused by something that you desire, and that's the good for you. You're looking for a good, and everything else is also looking for a good. Every animal, every plant, even for inanimate objects, we can define some form of good. Like if you're into dynamics, you can define something and drive the dynamics equation based on the minimization of some specific function. We can define that as the good, you know, minimizing that action integral, leading to like the Lagrange dynamics equation, something like that. But we can talk about the good. We can define it like that. And if we define it like that, what we're saying is basically, well, God is also looking for its good. We also said that what God's desiring is actually God, which basically means that God is its own good. The good of God is God itself. That's why God enjoys, because God is what God desires and what's good for God. So, but is there a relation, again, as I say, is there a relation between the good that God is desiring and the good that we are desiring? And I believe that there is. And everything would fall into place if we define our good as a participation in God's good. Yeah. I mean, it would follow, right? Our good, the thing that we want as good, would be a participation in God's good, but God's good is God itself. And it would make sense to say that what we desire as good is a participation in the good. We can define this kind of universal called good with capital G, and say, okay, all the goods that we define, they're all different species of the same thing, of good. And if we do that, because I believe everything in the end there is a common thing between different goods of different species. Like even though we're different, we have different essences, we have different goods because of that. But still there is something similar to all of them. So we can actually create this kind of universal good. And if we say that, okay, my good is a participation in God's good, and God is God's good, and we have this good because of participation in good, the only good answer that we can get out of it is that we should define God, the capital G, as good, capital G. Then everything falls into place. God is good. God is desiring good. Not only desiring its own good, desiring the good, capital G. And that's the act of existence. We all participate in that. By participating in that, we participate in existence, we participate in power, we participate in desire, And the object of desire also participates in the object of desire, that is God, which is good, and therefore our good, So our object of desire is the good when our is the good tailored to our essences, basically. And that can show that this thing that God is good makes sense. Would be suitable. It would fit perfectly. All right, so God desires itself, desires good, God is good, God is joy, God is power from the previous video. And we participate in all of these things by participating in existence. Okay, that's another video. I will make probably one more because again, the template's the same. I'm going really fast because I'm just using these as an example of how you can use the template. As I said, these are not like definite definitions, like things can change, right? I might make a mistake somewhere here, but I'm just doing some doodling, some random thoughts just to show you how to use that template, because I believe it's a powerful template that shows that ultimate explanation nature of God, that it actually provides something for us. It actually can enlighten the way that we look at the world. But it can get much deeper than that too. So yeah, probably I will give one more example in the next video, but after that I will just move beyond that and maybe assume a couple of divine attributes already by that point, and I won't get into much details. But yeah, I mean, just a very good exercise for you to try to think about these things, and it's really fun. Like if you get the hang of it, it's really fun. You're sitting and you're always thinking like, what do I see that I can attribute, that I can push toward existence, and what it would lead to, and that's the fun part of it. So I will leave you to it. Cheers.